One of the biggest reasons men fall into the trap of pleasing women first is the fear of losing her. Deep down, many men operate from a mindset of scarcity. They believe that if they don't do exactly what she wants, if they don't put her needs above their own, she'll walk away. That fear becomes the silent driver behind their every move. Instead of standing in their own power, they start bending, adjusting, and sacrificing just to keep her interested. But the moment you operate from fear, you've already given up your frame. You've told her without words that she holds all the control. Women can feel this energy instantly. She may not say it, but she knows when a man is acting out of fear rather than confidence. When your actions are motivated by the thought of, I don't want to lose her, you show her that you value her approval more than you value yourself. And the irony is, the more you act out of that fear, the more likely she is to lose interest. Attraction doesn't come from desperation. It comes from strength. Respect isn't built when you put yourself second. It's built when you refuse to compromise who you are just to keep someone around. The psychology here is simple. Fear makes men passive. Instead of leading, they follow. Instead of setting boundaries, they allow boundaries to be crossed. Instead of choosing the direction of the relationship, they hand over the steering wheel and just hope she doesn't crash it. And the problem with that is women aren't drawn to men they can control. They may tolerate it, they may use it for their benefit, but they never admire it. When you shift your mindset from, I don't want to lose her, to, I'm not afraid to lose her, everything changes. That shift is what makes you magnetic. You're no longer chasing. You're no longer trying to earn her approval through pleasing. You stand firm in your standards, you hold your frame, and you show her that being with you is her choice, not her leverage. And when you live that way, you don't just keep her attention, you earn her respect. The moment you stop acting out of fear and start acting out of strength, you stop being the man who pleases first and start being the man she never wants to lose. Another reason men often end up pleasing women first is because they tie their sense of self-worth to how much approval they can gain from her. This comes from a deeper psychological pattern where a man feels validated only when he's meeting her needs, making her happy, or sacrificing something for her. On the surface, it might look like care, generosity, or love. But underneath, it's really about seeking validation. The man isn't acting from abundance. He's acting from a need to be accepted. He believes that if she smiles, if she approves, if she stays, then he's enough. But the truth is, when you make your self-worth dependent on another person's reaction, you lose the foundation of your own confidence. The problem is, women quickly recognize when a man's actions come from a place of needing validation rather than authentic leadership. A woman can sense when you're not being genuine, but are instead trying to earn her approval like a child hoping to be rewarded. And while she might accept those gestures in the moment, deep down it creates the opposite effect of what you intended. It lowers her respect for you. Because respect and attraction don't grow when you're constantly trying to prove your value. They grow when you already know your value and carry yourself accordingly. This is why the men who seek validation through pleasing often find themselves stuck in one-sided dynamics. They overinvest emotionally, physically, and even financially, thinking that if they just give more, she'll see their worth. But in reality, what she sees is a man who doesn't believe he's enough on his own. And no matter how much you give, if you don't value yourself first, she won't value you either. Breaking this cycle requires shifting your focus inward. Instead of trying to earn validation from a woman, you have to build validation from within. That means setting standards, holding boundaries, and recognizing that your worth doesn't come from what you give, it comes from who you are. When you carry that energy, your actions toward her are no longer rooted in neediness, but in strength. You're not giving to get, you're giving because you already know you're whole. When you stop seeking validation and start owning your value, you transform from the man who constantly tries to prove himself to the man she can't help but respect and desire. Another powerful psychological truth behind men who please women first is that many of them are subconsciously afraid of conflict. Instead of saying what they really think, instead of setting boundaries or challenging a woman when it's necessary, they choose to agree, to go along, and to keep the peace. On the surface, it looks like politeness or being easygoing, but underneath, it's rooted in fear. Fear that if they say something she doesn't like, she'll get upset, pull away, or even leave. So to avoid tension, they sacrifice their voice, their standards, and even their identity. But here's the reality. Relationships without healthy conflict are shallow. A woman cannot truly respect a man who never challenges her, never pushes back, and never stands firm. If you're constantly walking on eggshells just to avoid upsetting her, you're not building intimacy, you're building resentment. Over time, she starts to sense that your agreement isn't real, that you're holding back your true thoughts, and it creates distance. She may even start to test you more, pushing boundaries just to see if you'll ever finally stand your ground. And if you continue to fold every time, her respect diminishes little by little. Women don't fall in love with men who fear conflict. They fall in love with men who can handle it. Conflict, when handled with maturity and composure, actually deepens connection because it shows you're real, you're honest, and you value yourself enough to speak up. But men who please first rob themselves of this opportunity. By avoiding conflict, they think they're preserving the relationship, when in reality, they're destroying it from within. The truth is, standing firm doesn't mean being aggressive or controlling. It means being authentic. It means if something bothers you, you voice it calmly. If your boundaries are crossed, you enforce them clearly. If you disagree, you state your perspective confidently. That kind of energy tells her that you're not afraid of her reaction because you value your integrity more than her temporary approval. When a man replaces fear of conflict with courage to speak his truth, he stops living as a people pleaser and starts living as a leader. And in that shift, he earns the respect, attraction, and loyalty that pleasers are constantly chasing but never truly get. One of the deepest issues with men who always put a woman first is that they unknowingly destroy the natural polarity between masculine and feminine energy. Attraction is built on this polarity. It's the spark between the man who leads with strength, direction, and purpose, and the woman who responds with her feminine energy of openness, nurture, and receptiveness. But when a man steps out of his role and hands over the leadership to her, when he makes every decision based on her mood, her wants, and her needs before his own, that polarity collapses. The relationship no longer feels like a dance of masculine and feminine. It becomes neutral, flat, and uninspiring. You'll notice this in couples where the man is constantly asking, what do you want to do? What do you want to eat? What do you think about this? On the surface, it looks considerate, but over time, it erodes the very attraction he's trying to maintain. Women might say they want a man who's agreeable all the time, but deep down, they crave the strength of a man who can decide, who can lead, who knows where he's going. A man who gives away that responsibility is not making her life easier. He's putting the burden of masculinity on her shoulders, and most women don't want that weight. When masculine polarity is lost, the relationship enters dangerous territory. She starts to feel more like the leader than the partner. She begins to question his confidence, his ambition, his ability to stand strong under pressure. And attraction fades because she doesn't feel like she's with a man who can protect, guide, or inspire her. That's why you see so many men confused when their partner says, I just don't feel it anymore. It's not random. It's because the polarity that fuels her desire is gone. The solution isn't to dominate or control. It's to reclaim masculine presence. It's about being decisive, having direction, and creating a frame where she can relax into her feminine energy instead of being forced to carry both roles. When a man keeps his masculine polarity strong, the relationship stays charged, exciting, and alive. Attraction doesn't thrive when a man surrenders his role. It thrives when he owns it fully and unapologetically. When a man constantly prioritizes pleasing a woman over his own needs, there's an invisible cost that builds up over time, and that cost is resentment. In the beginning, he convinces himself that sacrificing his desires is noble, that bending over backward to make her happy will secure her love and loyalty. He tells himself, if I give enough, she'll value me more. But what actually happens is the opposite. The more he gives without balance, the more he feels unnoticed, unappreciated, and even taken for granted. And that slow burn of resentment doesn't just poison him, it poisons the entire relationship. Think about it. When a man says yes to things he doesn't want to do, when he hides his feelings to keep her satisfied, he's not being authentic. He's lying to himself and, in a way, lying to her. Over time, that dishonesty eats at him. He starts to feel frustrated, but he won't express it directly because he's trained himself to avoid upsetting her. Instead, it comes out in passive-aggressive behavior, silent bitterness, or emotional withdrawal. And from her perspective, she begins to feel the distance, sensing that something is off, even if he's still trying to act like the nice guy. The harsh truth is that women don't respect men who suppress themselves. A woman would rather hear a man's raw truth, even if it creates tension, than feel the fake harmony of a man who's quietly unhappy. Because deep down, she can sense when his generosity comes from fear instead of strength. And once resentment builds, the dynamic shifts. He feels drained, she feels less attracted, and the connection starts to collapse. This is why it's so important for men to set limits and stay true to themselves. Giving in a relationship should be voluntary and rooted in strength, not obligation. When a man respects his own needs and values just as much as hers, his giving is pure, it's real, it's powerful, and it doesn't carry hidden bitterness. That's the kind of giving that actually inspires appreciation because it comes from choice, not desperation. If you don't respect yourself enough to stop overpleasing, you'll eventually resent her for taking what you freely gave, and that resentment will destroy everything you were trying to protect. The final truth about men who always put women first is that they fail to understand where real strength comes from. A man's power, his presence, and even his attractiveness don't come from how much he sacrifices or how often he says yes. It comes from how firmly he is rooted in his purpose. When a man prioritizes his mission, his growth, and his vision for life, he naturally becomes magnetic. Women are drawn to men who stand for something bigger than them both because it signals security, direction, and leadership. But when a man abandons that mission to constantly orbit around a woman, he loses the very essence of what makes him desirable. You'll notice that men who lack purpose end up clinging to relationships as their identity. They make her the center of their world, and in doing so, they lose the respect that could have kept her close. It's not that women don't want attention or affection. It's that they don't want to be the man's only focus. A woman feels safe and inspired when she sees that he is committed to his goals, disciplined in his habits, and unwilling to compromise his values. That kind of energy communicates, I am whole with or without you, and that's exactly what makes her want to stay by his side. The irony is that the man who chases approval by putting her first often ends up losing her, while the man who puts his purpose first gains both her respect and her loyalty. Purpose is what gives a man confidence that doesn't need external validation. It's what allows him to lead instead of follow, to give instead of beg, and to attract instead of chase. And because his worth isn't tied to her reactions, he's unshakable. She knows she can't manipulate or control him because his foundation is too strong. This doesn't mean ignoring a woman's needs or being selfish. It means creating balance. When your life has structure, vision, and direction, you have more to give to her because you're operating from abundance, not emptiness. She feels your strength when you're aligned with your purpose, and that strength is what keeps her thinking about you long after you've left the room. When a man learns to put his purpose above pleasing, he not only earns respect, he earns the kind of love that lasts.